Los Angeles taught me a lot about ambition. You know the picture: palm trees swaying under golden sunsets, celebrities walking down Rodeo Drive, and the endless sprawl of neighborhoods that seem to promise something for everyone. But after living there for a few years in my early 20s, I realized that the postcard version of LA is only one side of the story. The real side, the one I lived every single day, was a chaotic blend of beauty and struggle. The city was loud, intense, and alive, but it was also expensive. Every day felt like running on a treadmill that just kept getting faster. Rent for a tiny studio could swallow half your paycheck. Credit card debt lurked around every corner because the cost of simply existing there was staggering. My friends and I would joke that in LA, you didn't just work to live, you worked to survive. And yet, there was nothing funny about how real that survival felt. Bills stacked up like an endless staircase. A tank of gas felt like a luxury. Groceries sometimes meant sacrificing quality just to make sure the week stretched far enough. Every month, I paid the price of chasing the LA dream, but the dream rarely gave anything back. And then there were the wildfires, the orange skies, the ash falling like snow, the smell of smoke that crept through the tiniest cracks of your apartment. Each summer came with the reminder that nature could swallow this sprawling city whole, while helicopters circled overhead, dropping water on flames just a few miles away. If it wasn't wildfires, it was smash and grabs. I'll never forget the anxiety of parking my car downtown, knowing that at any moment, someone could shatter the window just to grab the bag sitting in the back seat. Riots, protests, endless lines of tents from the growing homeless crisis. LA was beautiful, but it was also a city on edge. Yet despite all of that, I loved Los Angeles too. I loved its food scene, where you could taste the whole world in a single block. Tacos at 2 a.m., ramen that warmed you in winter, vegan cafes that seemed more like art galleries. I loved the neighborhoods that carried their identities with pride: Little India with its spices and saris, Chinatown with its lanterns and dumpling houses, Little Tokyo with its sushi counters and anime shops. But one community in particular caught my heart: the Filipinos. And that's why today, I want to share a story that's very close to me. Historic Filipinotown, tucked quietly into the heart of Los Angeles. At first glance, you might miss it. Filipinotown doesn't have the same neon landmarks as Chinatown or the massive gates of Little Tokyo. But it's there, alive, breathing, and filled with stories that matter. Stories of resilience, culture, and history that have shaped not only Los Angeles but the Filipino identity in America. I first stumbled into Historic Filipinotown, or HiFi as the locals call it, while looking for a place to eat after work. I was exhausted, sitting in traffic on the 101, when I noticed a small restaurant glowing under string lights. The sign read, Jollibee. At the time, I had no idea what Jollibee was, but inside, I discovered fried chicken that rivaled any American fast food chain and spaghetti that tasted sweet, creamy, and unlike anything I'd ever had before. Around me, families laughed, children played, and the workers smiled like they actually wanted to be there. It felt different, warm in a way LA sometimes wasn't. That night was my introduction to the world of Filipino culture, and it opened a door I never closed again. Historic Filipinotown sits just west of downtown LA, bordering Echo Park and Silver Lake. It's not big, less than 3 square miles, but it carries a legacy far greater than its size. In the early 20th century, Filipinos began migrating to Los Angeles, working in fields, canneries, and service jobs. By the 1920s and 1930s, they formed a tight-knit community in the Bunker Hill area. But when redevelopment and displacement pushed them out, many resettled in what became known as Historic Filipinotown. Walking through HiFi today, you see traces of that history everywhere. Murals cover the walls, telling stories of Filipino struggles and triumphs. Churches ring bells on Sundays, pulling generations together in faith and tradition. Family-owned bakeries sell pandesal in the morning, their aroma drifting into the streets. There's a sense of belonging here, one that goes beyond the concrete and paint. The designation of Historic Filipinotown in 2002 wasn't just about geography. It was about recognition. Recognition of a people who fought through exclusion acts, racism, and decades of invisibility to finally have a place carved into the map of Los Angeles. recognition of the nurses, caregivers, teachers, and workers who built bridges between the Philippines and America. And here's what struck me most. The Filipino spirit was one of joy, even in the middle of hardship. LA can be cold. People rush past you, eyes glued to their phones, drowning in their own survival. But in HiFi, I felt something different. I felt community. Neighbors who knew each other's names. Elders sitting outside bakeries, chatting like old friends. Young people organizing festivals, eager to preserve their heritage. That spirit began to change me. As a 20-something blonde woman just trying to find her way in Los Angeles, I found comfort in a culture that wasn't even mine. I found warmth in the way Filipinos welcomed anyone, no matter where you came from, into their circle. I learned about the Filipino values of bayanihan, the spirit of communal unity and helping one another. I learned about their resilience during colonization, wars, and migration. And I learned that their presence in LA was about more than just surviving. It was about thriving, about keeping traditions alive even in a city that often forgets its roots. The food became my gateway. Oob ice cream, halo halo, adobo, lumpia, all of it spoke to something deeper than flavor. It spoke to heritage, to memory, to family tables back in the Philippines that I had never seen, but somehow felt connected to through every bite. The festivals in HiFi were another revelation. The Festival of Philippine Arts and Culture, for instance, transformed the neighborhood into a tapestry of color, music, and dance. Watching young performers in traditional attire, I saw not just entertainment, but survival. This was culture refusing to be erased. This was pride blooming in the heart of a city that often tried to silence smaller voices. The more time I spent in historic Filipinotown, the more I realized something. I wanted to know the Philippines itself. Not just through the restaurants, not just through the festivals, but through its people, its land, its stories. Los Angeles had given me chaos and beauty, struggle and survival. But in HiFi, I felt a different kind of possibility. The possibility of living a life less burdened by bills, traffic, and the endless hustle. A life where community still mattered. A life where joy wasn't something you had to buy. So when the opportunity came to work remotely, I made a choice that shocked even me. I packed my bags and bought a one-way ticket to the Philippines. It wasn't tea and escape. It was a return to something I hadn't realized I'd been searching for. The kindness I'd seen in historic Filipinotown wasn't just limited to that little corner of LA. It was a reflection of the Philippines itself. When I landed in Manila, I felt the same warmth that had first touched me back at that Jollibee in Los Angeles. People smiled, strangers helped me find my way, and there was laughter everywhere, even in the middle of heavy traffic and endless jeepney rides. Living in the Philippines as a foreigner gave me perspective. Rent was lower, food was abundant, and yes, the beaches were even more beautiful than the Instagram photos. But what made it home was the people. The same people whose ancestors built historic Filipinotown in Los Angeles. I found myself reflecting on the irony. I had to go to Los Angeles to discover historic Filipinotown, and I had to experience historic Filipinotown to finally make my way to the Philippines. It was like a circle, one that began in chaos, but ended in peace. Filipinos in Los Angeles built HiFi as a way to preserve identity. But for me, HiFi built a bridge, not just to a neighborhood, but to an entire country that embraced me with open arms. The lesson I've carried is simple. Community is everything. In a world where cities like LA push people into isolation, Filipinos remind us that life is better when shared, that laughter, food, and togetherness can heal more than money or fame ever will. So here I am, telling you this story not just as an American woman who found herself lost in Los Angeles, but as someone who found home in a culture that wasn't originally hers. Historic Filipinotown may be just a few miles wide, but its impact stretches across oceans. It stretches into the Philippines itself, where I now wake up every day grateful for the journey that began in a chaotic city and led me to a land of warmth, resilience, and belonging. And maybe, just maybe, that's the true gift of historic Filipinotown. Not just for Filipinos, but for anyone searching for home in a world that often feels too big, too cold, or too expensive. It's proof that home isn't always where you start. Sometimes it's where community finds you.